So for our next section of this unit, we're going to talk about what anthropologists mean by culture. And culture is this sort of nebulous thing, right? We can't really measure it. You can't like discover it or find it on a map. It just sort of exists, right? The old version of how we used to think about culture is that you were cultured, that you drank tea with your pinky up, or that you went to museums or enjoyed the ballet, said things like darling, right? That's not what we mean at all. In anthropology, culture has to do with the shared understandings or the shared ideas about the world that a group of people all share, and that also serve to guide our behavior, right? So if we look at it that way in terms of shared understandings, we're not really talking about a people, right? A lot of times people talk about a culture as if it's a group of people, when really a society would be the best term to talk about the people. But people in a society share ideas about culture, right? They share understandings about what it means to be right and wrong, good and bad, or somewhere in between. What are the correct ways to behave? What are the incorrect ways to behave? What's normal and what's abnormal, right? What do we criticize? What do we praise? And that can be different from culture to culture. Even within a society, there are many subcultures, and within a subculture, that could also be different, right? Even you and your parents or you and your grandparents might have different ideas about right and wrong or the right ways to be. That can sometimes cause tension, right? None of them are better or worse ideas, only if they harm people. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Cultures or the societies in which they share culture, they can be very different in terms of the things that they think about, in terms of how they see the world, right? So I really like this definition, the shared understandings that guide behavior. Within cultural anthropology, a person who studies cultural anthropology, they can look at sort of any part of that, right? So a person could study the anthropology of food, right? My favorite topic, of course. They could study the anthropology of gender and sexuality. They could look at politics or economics. Or medical anthropology, for instance, which has to do with healing and health and illness across cultures, right? So we can take this idea of culture and also separate it into parts, but when we think about how culture works, we also have to recognize that every part is integrated, right? We look at it in a holistic way, that families affect economics, right, which affect the way we get our food, which affects gender roles, right? So it's very integrated.